First off, sorry in advance for this video because it might get a little uncomfortable. So if you're not a fan of that uneasy feeling, feel free to skip it. But at least drop a like and share it first, so this channel can grow. Today we're talking about things in FGO that give off an uncomfortable vibe. Honestly, some of these moments just feel straight up nasty. And it's not just the players, even the characters in the game sometimes feel disgusted. It's not horror, but trust me, just thinking about it might make your skin crawl. Mary and Anne's relationship. So Mary Read and Anne Bonny were a famous pirate duo in history, known for how close they were. In fact, their bond is so strong that their spirit origin is literally one. Summon them once and you're getting both of them. Because of how inseparable they were, there are a lot of implications that they might have been lesbians. And honestly, I'd say those implications are pretty strong, even if there's no official confirmation. In entertainment media, female pairs like this tend to get a lot of attention, for obvious reasons. But what I really want to talk about is Mary's design. No matter how you look at her, she just screams childlike. If you didn't know who she was, you'd 100% assume she's a kid. Meanwhile, Anne is basically Miss Fanservice. I don't even need to point out which part of her design stands out because, let's be real, her entire body is the highlight. This is something that makes some people uncomfortable. The contrast between them is wild. Their card art makes Anne look twice Mary's height, which, for people who don't know the lore, can make their dynamic feel really weird, like borderline PDF file. Obviously, that's not the case, and I get that, but for people who don't know, it ends up looking kinda taboo. The funny thing is, in reality, their height difference is only 10 centimeters, so if they look way off, that's just artistic license. Even funnier, Mary, the one who looks like a kid, is actually 10 years older than Anne. Next up, Maeve. This woman is notorious, both in history and in the game, for how wicked she is. Even if you haven't played FGO that much, just from fan art and memes alone, you know she's got issues, and that she's only going to keep adding more. The disgusting moment I want to highlight about Maeve is her noble phantasm. As you probably know, Maeve is classified as a rider because, well, she rides men. Sure, historically she has legends involving bulls and chariots, but in FGO, what stands out is her long list of partners and the whole riding men thing. Now, if you look at her NP animation, her NP is basically her orgasming after trampling the enemy to death. There is a curtain, the love, and all that extra thing, but we can see that's what she is doing. Anyway, this NP animation can be done at any enemy. Yes, any enemy. Monster? Sure. Men? That's her thing. Kids? Yeah, that too. This gives off some seriously uncomfortable rope undertones, especially when you realize she can use this NP against characters like Nursery Rhyme, Jack, Alexander, and Young Gil. Well, obviously the devs didn't really mean for this to happen, but considering her actions, this seems pretty fitting for her. Next up, Raiko. This one's kinda sad. Raiko is a warrior who can be incredibly motherly to the people she loves. If you're on her good side, congrats. It's basically heaven. She's not just beautiful, she's insanely strong, skilled with multiple weapons, and let's be real, her body is ridiculous. If you're sleepy, well, she's got built-in pillows too. Anyway, she's also a berserker, at least the version of her we summon in Chaldea. And since she's a berserker, that means she has to have some level of madness that can't be erased. Her madness enhancement is X rank, and berserkers at that level can usually talk normally, but understanding them is a whole different story. Well, Raiko is a textbook example of that, and this is one of the things that makes some people feel kinda uncomfortable about her. Berserker Raiko cannot tell the difference between different types of love, romantic, platonic, familial. It's all the same to her. She sees child and lover as the exact same thing. It's creepy and honestly kind of sad. If it's not blood-related, and they're both adults, being treated like a child might not be too bad. I mean, who wouldn't want to be spoiled sometimes? But if it is blood-related, yeah, yikes. You can imagine where that leads. Still talking about Raiko, there's another situation I want to bring up. So, in Dead Heat Summer Race, it's implied, and in the Setsuban event, it's explicitly stated that Raiko's horse, Kyogoku, is disturbingly attracted to her body. Yeah, a horse that's sexually attracted to a woman, specifically a big-boobed woman. I really don't need to explain why that's kinda disgusting. This horse legit understands the difference in sizes of each woman's assets and is always freaking horny. He even compared Artoria's Saber and Lancer versions, as well as Xuanzang. This kinda triggers some cursed Dojin memories I worked so hard to erase. It's all just came flooding back. Sorry if I just made you remember some stuff too. Even in universe, Kyogoku's attraction is so creepy that other horses, Bailong and Dun Stallion, are weirded out. Even Lamre was this close to kicking his face in for it. In the game, this initially sounds like a joking conversation, but since it keeps going until the end of a section, it doesn't really feel like a joke anymore. Sanson. Normally, Sanson is a pretty somber and gloomy guy. Being an executioner doesn't exactly make for a cheerful personality, but even so, he's still polite and kind in his own way. The part I really want to highlight is how we first meet him in Orleans. This is the first time we see Sanson in FGO, and because John Alter basically slapped Madness Enhancement onto all her servants, we get to see a completely insane version of him. And honestly, the setting makes it even worse. Sanson was the man who executed Queen Marie Antoinette in the real history of France. And in this singularity, they meet again. Under Madness Enhancement, he starts equating executions to sacks when talking to Marie, the very person he put to death. Which is seriously disturbing. Considering Marie had no choice in her execution, the way he talks almost makes it sound like he's talking about R-wording her. His words get more and more unsettling every time he talks about executions, making it sound way too much like the R-word. In the manga adaptation, this scene gets even worse because we actually see his expression, completely unhinged, nothing like the Sanson we know. And after being forced to keep fighting in this broken mental state, he starts looking more like a mindless beast than a person. Look at him. That is literally what he looks like after being forced to kill Marie again, losing his arm and sinking into madness. Next up, Chloe's interlude. This one is kinda heavy. So in this interlude, Chloe decides she needs to power up using mana transfers, which, just like in her original work, means kissing girls. Given her age, that's already messed up. I know some people enjoy this, but let's be real, it's not right. But it gets even worse. It quickly becomes obvious that the power-up excuse is just an excuse for her to go around making out with girls. And her ideal targets are girls her age. The real problem is that the fights in the interlude happen because the girls don't want to be kissed, meaning Chloe is literally forcing herself on them. And the worst part is that the player is required to help her do it. So yeah, this interlude is basically about an underage girl harassing other underage girls. And you, the player, are forced to go along with it. Next up, the Servants of Shimosa. Back when it first dropped, Shimosa was one of the most talked about chapters. The main enemies here are the 7 servant swordmasters, and what makes them so disturbing is how they ended up on the enemy's side. They weren't just brainwashed or convinced. They were cursed with a kind of dark magic that completely drowned out their sense of self, leaving them as nothing more than crazed, bloodthirsty warriors who live only to fight. Personally, I've never liked enemies who are evil just because they're being controlled. It makes them feel less like actual villains and more like victims, and that's exactly the case here. The 7 servants aren't fighting out of their own will, they're just puppets of the curse. Well, they can think, but that thought also got contaminated with the curse. So no matter what, that is not their real thought process. And when I say slaughter, I mean it. Their brutality is on another level. They wipe out entire villages in minutes with zero hesitation or remorse. The manga adaptation makes this even worse. The very first swordmaster, Inshun, doesn't just kill people, he butchers them. Men, women, children, and even the elderly, are all torn apart as they try to run or hide. It's straight up horrifying. But the worst part is, they can't stop. Even if you cut them down, their bodies just regenerate like nothing happened. Like when Musashi finally fights Inshun, she beheads him, and his head rolls right to Ritsuka's feet. But his body just keeps going, and a brand new head starts forming, one layer of flesh at a time. So in the end, these guys are trapped in a nightmare. They're forced to keep killing, unable to control themselves, unable to understand what's happening, and worst of all, unable to die. Well, at least that's their fate without Muramasa's special sword and Musashi's help in dueling them one by one. So, what do you think? I hope this topic isn't too heavy for you guys. Just a little reminder, this is the Fate series. The dark tone is always there, lurking beneath the surface. What's another thing in FGO that you find disturbing? Click subscribe and see you guys next time.